So what did you get when you typed that in your calculator? 11 squared minus 4 times negative 6 times 10. What'd you get? Okay, so that means that we have how many solutions, and what kind of solutions do we have? 2 real solutions. Okay, so now take the square root of that number. And since it's positive, we can type that in our calculator. If it's negative, we can't. So take the square root of 361. And it is a perfect square, so you should not get a decimal. I think you get 19. Who got 19? Okay, so now let's do our quadratic formula. So for my first solution, x equals the opposite of b. So if b is negative 11, if b is positive 11, in the quadratic formula, we're going to flip that sign and use negative 11 plus 19 divided by 2 times a. So type in your calculator, taking negative 11 plus 19. And you should get 8. And then 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. So my first solution on the final exam, I would take it, you could say negative 8 over 12. That would be okay. Or you could reduce that down by dividing it top and bottom by 4. And you would get negative 2 over 3. That's also okay. And if you give me the answer as a decimal, I would accept that also. So that's 3 different ways for you to write the first answer. All are full credit. So let's find my second solution. Second solution, x equals opposite of b minus 19 all over 2 times negative 6. So go ahead and see what you get for your second solution. So quadratic formula, first we add, then we do it again with subtraction. That's why it says plus minus, because there's 2 answers. So you have negative 30 divided by negative 12. So my second solution, I would accept 30 over 12 as a solution. Or you can reduce that. Remember, 2 negatives become positive. So that's why it's positive 30 over positive 12. Or you can reduce that by dividing by 6. If you divide by 6, that would become 5 over 2. Or you could write that as a decimal. Any questions about how we solved that using the quadratic formula? Alrighty, so in your Add Your Mind book, let's go ahead and go to page 289. And then write this in big letters. You always want to start off by looking for your GCF. That's my first step. Always look for a greatest common factor. Okay, so when we look at this one, What is my greatest common factor? 4. Good. 4 and something else. We could take out a 4 and we could also take out x because they all have x's and they all have 4s. Now, because we're going to factor this down, it's always easier to factor when a is positive. So I'm actually going to divide it by a negative 4x because if I want to factor it, I need a to be positive. On the final exam, if you took out a 4x, that would still be okay. You would just have to do the quadratic formula, which is fine. You still get the same answers. So let's take out our negative 4x and write what you have left in parentheses. After you divide all 3 terms by negative 4x, what do you have left? So go ahead and do that. So the first term would be positive x squared. Then you would have a negative x and a negative 2. So let's factor this down. Factor down what we have right here. My x squared goes in the top left. The negative 2 goes in the bottom right. I need 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 2, but add to negative 1. And the only thing that multiplies to be 2 is 2 times 1. So I have a negative 2x and a positive 1x. Let's take out my GCFs. Okay, so that negative 4x that I took out for my GCF. And then I have my 2 factors, which are x minus 2 and x plus 1. So I'm going to set all 3 of these equal to 0. So negative 4x equals 0. X minus 2 equals 0. X plus 1 equals 0. Go ahead and solve to get your 3 solutions. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4 for this first one. And 0 divided by negative 4 is 0. So x equals 0 is my first solution. For my second one, I'm going to add the 2. So x equals 2 is my second solution. And for my third, I'm going to subtract 1. So x equals 1 is my x equals negative 1, sorry, is my third solution. I'm going to move that down so that I have some space to do my sketch. So now what I want you to do is put a point approximately where they would fall on this x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and mark mine. All right, so 0 would be in the middle. 2 and negative 1. All three have an exponent of 1. So see how this x has an exponent of 1, this one has an exponent of 1, and so they all have an exponent of 1. So it's going to go through the x-axis all at all 3 x-intercepts. It's going to go through. This is an odd degree function, so I have opposite arrows. And because I started off with a negative 4, it's going to go down on the right and do the opposite on the left. And then it just goes through. And that is your sketch. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes, you will have calculators on the final. And I'll talk about the final some more at the end of class. We can talk about that. So let's look at number 2. Go ahead and take out your GCF. So look at question number 2, same page. Look for your greatest common factor for number 2. So what do you think my GCF is for this one? 2x, not just 2x. We can go higher, 2x squared, because they all have an x squared. So we're going to actually take out 2x squared. And we're left with x squared minus 4x plus 3. Let's go ahead and factor that down. So you need two numbers that multiply to be positive 3 and add to negative 4. So does anyone know my numbers that multiply to be positive 3 but add to negative 4? Negative 3 and negative 1. Good. So let's take out our GCF. So we got x and x, negative 3, negative 1. So this, my factors are the 2x squared that I took out, x minus 3, and x minus 1. So let's solve and get our 3 solutions. So let's start off with this 2x squared. Let's solve that for x. So in order to solve that for x, we would divide by 2. And then take the square root. And what do you think the square root of 0 is? 0. Good. Now let's do the same thing with the other 2. X minus 3 equals 0. So I have to add 3. So that gives me x equals 3 as my second solution. And then lastly is x minus 1. All right, go ahead and mark your x-axis. So okay, so 0, 0, that's in the middle. 3 and 1. Go ahead and put your points down. So let's talk about the behavior. So notice how this first one is an x squared. Because that's an x squared, at the 0, it's not going to go through, it's going to bounce. I'm going to write, it's going to bounce at the 0. It doesn't go through. It is going to go through on my other two because the exponents are 1s on those two. So for those two, they will go through. So it's going to go through, and it's going to go through. Okay. So this is a 4th degree. So what's going to happen with my arrows? Are they going to be the same or opposite? The same. Now this is a positive 2. So is it going to go up, up, or down, down? Up, up. So let's do that. So furthest to the left, put in up. Furthest to the right, put in up. And then we'll talk about what happens in the middle. So on this first one, it's going to come down. It's not going to go through, though. It's going to come down, hit the 0, and bounce back up. Then it makes a U-turn, comes back. It goes through at the 1, makes another U-turn, goes through at the 3. And I don't know how low. I don't know. Like, this is a sketch. So in pre-calculus, they would actually have to tell me where it made the U-turn. And I'm not really worried about that in Algebra 2. So I don't know where it makes the U-turn. It can make it right away, or it could go down really low and make a U-turn. But the main thing is the behaviors that's happening on the x-axis. It bounces here, it goes through, and it goes through. So our last question of today is reviewing the e-learning lesson that I did on Tuesday. I did post that on Canvas. If you have not watched it, this will be the first time you have seen this process. I still encourage you to watch it as soon as possible as we are in preparation for our final exam. So let's look at number 3. Go to page 290. And I'm going to review synthetic division. This is Tuesday's lesson. So this is a 3rd degree. So I'm looking for 3 solutions, 3 x-intercepts. They told me the first one. They told me that I have an x-intercept at -1, so I'm going to write that down. And now I need to find the other 2. So in order to do synthetic division, you need to know a solution. So we're going to make our L bracket. The -1 goes on the outside. And then you're going to list the numbers. So only the numbers. So 2, 11, 18, and 9. So write that 2, 11, 18, and 9. So this is way faster than long division. Synthetic division takes seconds, whereas long division takes minutes because it's a long, long process. So in order to do long division, we bring down this first number. You never do anything with that first number. You just drop it down. And then you take this number, and multiply it by -1. So what is 2 times -1? 2 times -1 is -2. Put that under the 11. And now, in your calculator, if you need to, add these 2 numbers and bring that number down. So what is 11 plus -2? 9. And now you're going to repeat. Take the 9 and multiply that by -1. What is 9 times -1? -9. Take your calculator, add those together. And repeat one more time. 9 times -1. And I end with a 0. You should end with a 0. If you're not ending with a 0, something is wrong. Okay, so these three numbers represent A, B, and C. So I have 2x squared plus 9x plus 9. So let's go ahead and factor this out. Make your box. You have 2x squared. A goes here, C goes here. Go ahead and find your two numbers that multiply to be 2 times 9 and add to B. So take a moment, see if you can finish factoring that out, and then we'll come back together. Okay, good. So 6x and 3x. And then we take out our GCF. So that would be a 2x and a positive 3, a x and a positive 3. Set both of those equal to 0. So 2x plus 3 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. So for the first one, when we subtract the 3 and then divide by 2, we get x equals negative 3 over 2, which you can also write as negative 1.5. And then, so that's one of my answers. And then for my third answer, I subtract the 3, and I get x equals negative 3. So now I know all three solutions. So they gave me 1. I'm going to write it as a decimal. And now I know all three. So let's go ahead and put your points down. I'm going to mark up my little x-axis here. So I have a point at negative 1. So negative 1. Then I have a point between negative 1 and negative 2, because negative 1.5 is in between negative 1 and negative 2. So I'm going to put that right there. And then I also have one at negative 3. Okay, so this is an odd degree positive. So it's odd positive. So that means it goes up and then down. And all of these, and it's going to go through because I don't have any x squares when I factored it down. So it goes through, makes a U-turn, through, makes a U-turn, through. That would be your graph. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Hold on one second.